So last week we had 5 blues licks, one for each position of our pentatonic minor scale. In this week's lesson we're going to do the country equivalent of that kind of thing, but using the CAGED system as opposed to a pentatonic system. So we're going to play one extremely tasty, twangy, authentic and vintage-inspired country lick in each of our CAGED positions. That's the C shape, the A shape, the G shape, the E shape and the D shape. And if you need a quick primer on what CAGED is all about, luckily I do have a video on that exact subject and I'll link to it in the description. And that's where you'll also find the links to get hold of my lesson materials. That includes tab and notation in Guitar Pro and PDF formats. In the Guitar Pro file I embed the audio in with it so you don't have to put up with that horrible MIDI sound. You'll also get my backing track and the audio file of the licks themselves. You can find that on my Patreon page with all of my other lessons, so that's hundreds and hundreds of lessons for just 10 quid a month. Or you can buy this as a one-off purchase at the Gumroad link. Either way, thanks for your support. Okay, so let's get into things. We're in the key of D, and on my backing track I put down an acoustic guitar part, capoed at the 2nd fret, with just some simple Travis picking on a C chord shape, which is actually a D chord of course, now the capo's on it too. That kind of thing. Of course this would also be a good opportunity to try and do this with no capo. If you want to be really thorough, another little good workout for the CAGED system, right? Worth practicing those things as a bit of a side note. That's the C-shaped D major chord. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be playing over, and our first lick is going to be built from within this zone, this C shape from the CAGED system. So just to clarify, that's like an open C chord that's been dragged out of the water 2 frets higher. Of course you've got to carry the open strings with you, so you end up with this. And we're mapping everything out within that sort of territory. So this lick kicks off with a very common pedal steel pickup line. Think Lloyd Green. So it's all through the D major scale, starting on the 5th degree, walking through the 6th, the major 7th, the root and the 2nd before coming back, and then doing one of these full step bends on the B string 5th fret, hold it at the peak and add your little finger to the top string and pluck that. So that's without too much nuance or embellishment. You could add one extra layer of detail to it and get that little chicken picking thing in there that I did. It's very subtle. It's just here on this G string I'm muting with this hand and then plucking the string and then using my finger to pick the next note. I'm also picking that final note with my 2nd finger, so a bit of hybrid picking going on there. That's if you want to go the extra mile, of course. Now just before we carry on, as a little bonus, I'll show you a couple of really common alternatives to that kind of pickup line. Quoting Lloyd Green himself, of course. That's pretty cool. You've also got this option. Okay, let's carry on. Now we release this bend and come down a D major pentatonic scale and then play this little bluegrass thing that I often talk about in my videos. Still mostly D major pentatonic, but we're using this flattened 3rd as a quick little pull-off note to that 2nd degree of the scale and then coming down the rest of the scale and then bouncing back to the A string there. That can take a bit of practice with your little finger, getting accurate at it and not hearing anything buzzing out. So that's the first half of the lick, and then we play this. So thinking of that D major position, I'm really thinking of a D major triad kind of thing here, or an arpeggio. And I'm playing this top note of the shape and walking down chromatically towards the major 3rd. But before I get there, I do a little enclosure around it. So we've already got the semitone above, we go semitone below and slide into it, and then come down this B minor triad, which gives us the sound of a D major 6th chord. Very swing centric again. And then back to that 2nd fret of the G string before we go to this, which implies a chord that isn't even in the progression. So this would be an A7. I think of it as being part of this A7 first inversion on the middle 4 strings, but we're not bothering with the A string. So you got the flat 7, the root and the 5th, and then resolve that to your D major triad on the same 3 strings. So we're getting a little bit of an implied 5-1 moment, which is always good to do as a lead player, even if you're on a static chord like a D major. To get a bit of push and pull, go to the 5 now and then in your phrases. It can be as simple as just using the triad. Implying that A major, or the A7 in this case. Fun to play around with that. I often like to start phrases that way, so if I'm playing over a D major chord, the first thing I might think about is A7, just to play a little bit of a pickup run into the D chord, to give it a bit of a sense of some kind of story unfolding, a bit of tension, a bit of release right off the bat. Another nice little option that's worth exploring where that A7 is you could go one step further from A7 and think A augmented. So that's the sharp 5, the root and the third of the A, and then resolve that to D, for example. Gives it that kind of ragtimey sound. Let's hear the whole lick with that and an alternative pickup line ahead of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So again, as always, you have many options. Do play around with them. Okay, so now I'm going to play that whole lick at a slower tempo. Let's go with 90 BPM. We come in on the and of 1, by the way. Very common for these kind of pickup lines that start the phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, now for the second lick, we need to figure out what would be the next caged shape across. So you've done your C shape for your D chord. The next one would be your A shape for the D chord. So you can think of these using the same root, but we have a shape on the left and a shape on the right. That's how I like to look at it. So we've got the full range of this, if we play it the classical way, but we're just kind of thinking of this block shape here. Either way, that's the sort of territory we're going to be staying in now for this second lick. The first half of the lick again uses a lot of pedal steel type of vocabulary. If you're serious about playing country guitar, especially the authentic old school way, it's really worth your time to listen to a lot of pedal steel players. So this little pickup line starts on the major third, and then we hammer on, specifically with the third finger, to the 5th of the chord. That's on the 7th fret. Then we go to the next string and walk up the major scale. The 6th, the major 7th and the root. All with hammer-ons there. So pick, pick. And then, while this continues to ring, bar the top 2 strings at the 5th fret and go through them consecutively. So you get that sort of cascading of notes that overlap onto each other. If we weren't going to go to the top string there, you could try and get that cascading or overlapping happening lower down, by keeping this one in place. And then we go on to the B string and hammer on from 5 to 7, and then pick that top string again. And then this bluegrass kind of lick, hammering on from 5 to 7, and then go back, and then a very fast pull off, just like the one down here, from the minor third to the 2nd degree of the major pentatonic. We do the same 1 octave higher now, and then down the D major pentatonic scale, and then again implying a 5 chord even when there isn't one present in the progression. A major triad on the top string set. Notice how I'm hybrid picking these, plectrum, 2nd finger and 3rd finger. And then the D major triad on the same 3 strings. So again, that little 5-1 thing happening for a moment. You could also try and hammer onto that. That's a nice little trick. But in this case, I wanted the real kind of punchy attack of hybrid picking both. And then we have this really nice, playful little ragtime kind of idea. Where, again, if we're thinking D major pentatonic, you've got these top 2 strings. You've also got the benefit of the minor third as an enclosure to the major third if you want to bring in a bit of bluegrass or bluesy flavour. And if we want all the nuance I like to get a bit of chicken pick in there again. What I did on the opening performance is I picked that B string, muted, and then plucked the top string with my second finger, just to give it a bit more percussive edge. And then, again, that phrase, that's going to keep cropping up. Minor third to the second degree, and then the root. And you've got a choice there, whether you want to do that as a pull-off or as a bend, where you could pre-bend that 5th fret and then bring it down. I think that's how I did it on the opening performance, actually. Okay, so again, here's the whole thing slowed down. We come in on the and of 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right, now for our third lick, we need the next shape along in the caged system. So far we've had the C shape, the A shape. The next letter in the word caged is G. Well done. This would be a G-shaped D chord. So we're going to map this lick out between frets 7 and 10. Okay, so this lick kicks off with a playful little run. Mostly D major pentatonic. Now let me explain something here.
Not explain, but I'm gonna explain to you.
If you think of your D major pentatonic, a lot of people when they're first learning their major pentatonic simply think of the relative minor pentatonic shape, which they know and love very well. So that would be the B minor pentatonic, which is also the D major pentatonic, right? Now extrapolating further from there, what do you do with the minor pentatonic? You often make it the blues scale, don't you, by adding that flat 5. So you could be thinking of this as the B minor blues scale, or the B blues scale for short. But let's do that with the context of D major being the root, and now you've got what I call the D major blues scale. So that note that we added for the B minor, we said that was the flat 5, the blue note. In the context of D being our root, that's actually your minor third, which explains all that cool stuff we hear all the time. Minor to major third. You can find it within your major blues scale. Okay, so with all of that out the way, we get these 3 notes to clash. I love this sound. Ragtimey to me again, that. I think of Blind Blake and players of that sort. So we've got the minor third, the major third, clashing, and then the root on top. We just let them overlap briefly. And then back to the major pentatonic, and then we go, bringing in that blues note again. And then we do a bit of a pedal steel thing. So this little phrase here, you're taking this G string 9th fret and bending it a whole step to meet that major third of D. And then keep it held up, grab your B note on the top string. Don't let the bend fall, pick that bent note again, and then bring your pinky, or little finger if we're being British about it, to the 10th fret of the B string. And then bring the bend down and play the root to finish. Hybrid picking there again. So that's plectrum, 3rd finger, plectrum, 2nd finger, plectrum, twice in a row. Okay, so let me rattle through that one at a slower tempo. This phrase started on, what was it, the 4th beat? 1, 2, 3. And again. Okay, so for our 4th lick, we need the 4th caged shape. This is really going to test our ability to spell the word caged. So what came after G? You know, we had the C shape, the A shape, G shape. Now we need the E shape at the 10th fret of the low E string. Very familiar looking bar chord, I should hope. Now this phrase kicks off with one of my favourite pedal steel type licks, something that I stole from Campilongo. Do check him out if you've not heard him before, but I'm sure if you sat there watching this country lesson and you're a fan of Telecasters, you'll already know all about him. Okay, now let's get the mechanical side of this down first, and then we'll come back and look at exactly what's going on theory-wise with our note choices. So think of this diagonal line here on the top 3 strings, frets 11, 10 and 9. Play that G string, bend it a semitone and hold it at the peak. Do not let it budge a millimetre. Then play the next note, then the next note. And then slide that first finger across and then release that G string bend downwards. Super pretty, right? It's very important that you hold that bend nice and tight. It's got to be super stable. Now let's look at what we're implying there. If we think of those notes, what is that? That's the top of an A7, right? So again, like before, we're implying A7 to D. It's as if we're going to this D major triad. Very pretty. Okay, then carrying on with the phrase, we play. So mostly major pentatonic stuff again. A little half bend, bring it back, go to the root, same on the next string. And then we go to that thing that we've spoken about a couple of times now, the second degree of the scale with the minor third as a passing note into it, but we're going to pre-bend. And then the root, just like we did to finish lick number 2. And then we're going to play this very common country lick. So we're thinking of this kind of common phrasing that you'll have heard it in, only we've already played this note, so now we just pick up the remainder of that lick. We're walking chromatically from the 2 to the 3 of the D major chord. And then we go to the next string, the 5th and the 6th, and then the root. And then we play this, again implying A7, or just simply A major, however you want to look at it. We pick the G and E strings, hybrid style, plectrum and third finger. And then we do probably the most common country bend of all time. For most people, that's the first kind of country trick they learn. We used it earlier, didn't we, as well? Towards the end of that phrase. So you can think of it as a D major triad, and you're just bending into the major third rather than fretting it outright. So when you're bending into a note, of course, you've got to figure out where you're going to begin the bend from. Makes sense to try a scale degree, right? So like the second degree in this case. That kind of thing, by the way, sounds good whether you pick just all 3 strings, whether you play them separately, whether you pick them in pairs. Can't really go wrong with that. Volume swell. That obviously is always a nice little touch to add. Do check out my video on that stuff if you've not seen it. Country steel bends and volume swells. There's a lot of nice material in that one. Okay, now as per usual, let's play that at a slower speed with the metronome at 90 BPM. The phrase begins on the and of 2 this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And again. 1, 2. Notice how I'm playing around with where I'm striking the string to get different textures, different tones. Makes a huge difference. Just change where you're striking the string and also mess with different angles of pick attack. You know, as your pick straightens up and levels out, you're going to get a brighter, harsher tone. Try and use a thicker pick as well. Something like a Dunlop H3 is good. Fairly heavy. Okay, so our final phrase requires the final caged shape. So what letter finishes the word caged? D. Well done, class. Well done. So a D shape. We can do it down in open position or up at the 12th fret. For this lick, we're going to choose to go down low so we can get that sort of faux baritone kind of country vibe. This one is a real mixture of major pentatonic with that blues note added that we spoke about, and the minor pentatonic with the blues note added. So we start off with a bit of the major pentatonic with the blues note added. So think D major, your 2, chromatically walking up through the minor third to the major third, then onto the next string, open, 2nd fret open. That's your 5th and your 6th degree of the scale. Then to the root. Now when you hit these open strings, you want to do exactly what we just spoke about. Pick nearer the bridge to prevent them from sounding a little bit formless like this. Now that sounds alright on its own, but that will get lost in a mix before you can even click your fingers. So pick near the bridge, near the saddles. Then we repeat that idea 1 octave higher. It's good to map that out all over the fretboard. It's just the same phrase twice, right? Then we come down the major pentatonic, do one of these fast little pull-offs again from the flat 3 to the 2nd degree, and then grab the open string. A lot of open strings involved. And then the minor blues scale comes in. This is a phrase you're probably tired of now. You've seen it in most of my videos recently, but I think it sounds great, so we're going to do it again shamelessly. You've got your root with the little finger there holding it down. Grab your flat 5, your blue note, and hammer on to the 5th. And then go back to that blue note and pull off. Now this is one of those things I always talk about knowing your blues scales, major and minor, in open position, not just, fretted higher up the neck. It gives you the opportunity to do all this cool stuff. And again, there's some hybrid picking going on there. Plectrum and 2nd finger. Okay, so here's lick number 5, slowed down to 90 beats per minute. Oh, and this one comes in on the 2nd beat of the bar. 3, 4, 1. And again, 3, 4, 1. Nice. Now that's all the licks done. But as we always say in these videos, it's not simply a case of learning them note for note, although that's really important to do as well, because it tests your ability to learn things and test your memory, both physical and mental, and also gets your technical chops nice and rounded out. The idea with this stuff really is going beyond the scope of that and making sure that you can come out with your own ideas using these elements. Take a lick, break it down into little sections, and get to know each shape. What kind of path is being trodden, and what can you do differently? How could you time it differently? How could you phrase it differently? Could you add double stops? Could you use more legato? Could you pick harder? Could you pick lighter? Could you put bends in? Could you use hammer-ons? There are almost endless options on ways that you can spice these up and make them your own. So please do go away and practice them that way. Learn the phrases first, get them sounding good, and then look deeper and figure out what they're comprised of and do your own kind of thing with those ingredients. Okay, so let's get into some tone talk. This is my Fender 52 Telecaster, and it's sporting my Farron 5 Sun Bear pickups, my signature tele pickups. They have that real authentic mid-60s Telecaster country twang kind of vibe. Think players like Don Rich. There's so much sparkle and detail on the bridge pickup, which is something that I've often found lacking in other tele pickups. And it gives you such a wide range of tones to play around with. From full sparkle, full twang, to rolling the tone back a little bit and getting more of that kind of broadcaster, muscular mid-range kind of tone. So versatile. I was on the bridge pickup the whole time, tone all the way up, volume all the way up. And this time we're not using any pedals at all, aside from a tuner, of course, but we're just plugged straight into my 69 Deluxe reverb for that really authentic 60s country twang sound. I'm plugged into the 2nd input of the vibrato channel, and the volume, treble and bass are all set to 4, with the reverb at 3. The speaker in there is a modern Eminence Alessandro SC64 12-inch speaker, and I love it. It sounds really close to the original, which I do have, but I've got it in a box for safekeeping. String-wise, I'm using Stringjoy Broadways, and plectrum-wise, as mentioned earlier, I'm using a Dunlop H3. It's like a little Jazz 3 pick, but just a little bit stiffer. Okay guys, so please do let me know down in the comments what you thought of the lesson. Your feedback really does mean a lot to me. And do hit the like button. That stuff makes a massive difference to the visibility of my channel. And also share this video with anyone that you think might be interested. Okay guys, so with all of that said and done, go away and get twangy with your telecaster, and I'll see you next time for something completely different. Alright, take care.